everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you a bit about scale rot and how one of my corn snakes, Opal, got over it. When I first got Opal, she had a few off-colour scales like you see here, but I wasn't quite sure what was from because I'd never had a snake look like this before. After a bit of online research, I figured that it must be scale rot. Scale rot is a bacterial or fungal infection of the skin, where basically if they're kept in unhygienic conditions or on damp substrate, they can end up getting this bacteria and fungus attack their scales, which basically rots them from the outside in. It's a terrible thing for them to have, and a lot of snakes can die from this, so it's important to get on top of it. Within a week of having Opal, she looked like this. Her skin had turned a kind of yellowish colour, she was dehydrated even though she had water available at all times, she looked kind of rough. If you can see here, it looks like the scales are sticking out from the sides, where instead of being smooth and streamlined like a snake usually would be. At this point, I had already emailed a reptile vet, but unfortunately I actually could not bring her to one, and the vet said that at this point, the best thing for her would be to give her iodine baths. I decided I'd give her 1 week with the iodine baths, and if there was no improvement at all, she'd have to go up to the reptile vet. This was her second shed since I got her, and when she shed, she looked a lot better. So much better than before. She still had a few scales that looked off, and she had a lot of little cuts along her, but she looked way better than when I originally had her. So you can see here her neck, it still has that rough kind of look on her because it was more difficult to apply the iodine around her head and neck area, because obviously with the open wounds, iodine in an open wound, it stings like hell. So she obviously was not very happy for me to be doing that. But the rest of her body was recovering very well. There was a few little cuts about the midway down, and everything else was starting to look more white the way she should be. At this point, I'd had her about 3 weeks, and she still hadn't eaten anything for me, and unfortunately, she still wouldn't. So she was still off food, and I'm thinking it might have been because of the fact that she wasn't feeling all that well. She was in a new place. She hadn't had a chance to settle down because from the day I got her, I've been keeping an eye on her and applying iodine and stuff, so she didn't really get time to settle. And then on top of all that, she was kept in a quarantine tub, so she had a very minimal tub. She was given just her house that you can see here, her water bowl, and a few toilet roll tubes and stuff that I could throw out every time I cleaned her. Scale rot can be extremely infectious, so it's important if any of your animals have it, or if you suspect any of your animals have it, that you quarantine them and move them away from everyone else. A week after her previous shed, and she was starting to look kind of like she did before, where the skin was turning kind of a yellowish colour, but some of this was because of the iodine itself, because I decided around her neck area that I really wanted to help in that area specifically, so I was using a more concentrated version instead of watering it down as much as I had it for the rest of her body beforehand. The iodine solution that I ended up using was Tamodine, and Tamodine is a reptile-specific iodine solution, and it's used as an antiseptic for cuts and abrasions. So I used it for her scale rot, so I used majority of a small bottle. I think it's a 200ml bottle. I used majority of that for her, but now, currently, she's way better, and I haven't even used the full bottle, so you really don't need that much. To apply it, what I did was I sprayed her down with a spray bottle with just lukewarm water, and then I put the Tamodine on a cotton pad. So the cotton pads are easy enough to find in nearly every shop, and I just put the Tamodine on them, and then I'd rub along her body with it to make sure that I covered everywhere. Make sure to get their stomach as well, because the belly scales is usually where you'll see scale rot start to develop, so I just had to make sure to get literally every single inch of her. Over time, she understandably became a little bit more aggressive as I was handling her, because every time I was taking her out, she was in pain because I was putting the iodine onto technically open wounds. So she became a bit mean as we were going, so I had to actually get help applying the iodine to her. And within only a few days before her next shed, her neck looked like this. So it looked really bad in person, but you can see where the thicker yellow bit is on the right hand side is actually mostly just dried on iodine. At 4.5 weeks of ownership, she was looking way better than she originally did. The only issues with her were some little cuts along her neck, but the rest of her was perfect. She didn't have any sort of yellowish tinge, she didn't have any sort of dead scales or scabs, aside from the 2 or 3 on her neck. So I was actually really happy with her progress and really happy to see the original colour that she was meant to be. So she's an opal morph, and I'm lazy, so I'm naming her Opal, and they're meant to be a very nice plain white coloured cornsnake. So I was pretty happy to see that she was turning white again, and I was hoping that she was in less discomfort. At this point, she actually started exploring properly again. She started using her hides the way I'd left them for her, because originally when she was really bad, she wouldn't use her hides. She would just lay in the open and not move all day, every day. And several times I was actually half convinced that she'd already passed away. She was very listless and didn't really want to do anything. After about a month and a half, she finally ate her first rat with me, and I was very happy to see this because it meant that she actually had an appetite. She was willing to hunt and eat, and she wanted to live. She was finally bothered trying to live. About a week after she'd eaten this, she shed again, and now she looks nearly perfect. She's white all over, she's smooth, she only has a few scales that look a little iffy, but I'm just going to keep treating them just to make sure. And she has no scabs left on her. She is perfect. So that's it for this video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment them below and I'll try my absolute best to help you. Thank you very much for watching.